Welcome to Stitches in Time, the podcast discussing Doctor Who the way it was meant to be watched. In chronological order, one clip at a time, starting at the Big Bang and ending with the heat death of the universe. I'm Becca, the Matrix archivist, and I spent the last 12 years of my life meticulously editing the entire televised Doctor Who universe into chronological order.
And I'm Mandy, and this actually happened to me once in a butterfly garden.
That's interesting. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't. They spend a lot of time talking about stepping on butterflies. They don't consider a 3-year-old taking the butterflies and just ripping them apart.
You're a bad kid.
I was not the kid. I was a good kid.
Oh, okay.
We were watching another kid do it. I was the person who had to become a lizard afterward.
That is unfortunate. And also joining us once again this week is the amazing, wonderful Dan Peck.
Hello, and I am now batting 1,000 on episodes about bugs.
Yeah, that's what this is. Yeah, today we're talking about space babies, specifically the clip that Millie Gibson steps on a butterfly and turns into a lizard thing.
This is actually, it's really nice that we have Dan again on here because we actually watched this episode for the first time at Dan's place.
That's right.
As part of a little viewing party. And when we got to this point, I looked at Becca in panic of, oh no, we have to reassess the timeline.
Yeah. Eventually we're going to get to the point where we're going to have to start inserting episodes into previous segments of the podcast because of where they land or something.
I think if that happens, you have to start over.
Davies won't do that to us. He's a fan of the show. He's not going to mess with the timeline.
That's true. Yeah. The only reason he returned to Doctor Who as showrunner is because we reached out to him and were like, listen, Stitches in Time team would really like you to come back.
Yeah, we just need some more stuff to firm up the timeline. But he's made it to this point. He's like, here's as far back as I'm going to go. And I'm just going to make sure that I will only do forward in time relative to what Stitches in Time has canonized.
Yeah.
And he can mess with things a little bit. Like you have time to kind of reassess and re-edit things.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that Ncuti was actually accurate at giving a time, which is not a thing that the Doctor usually do. Usually they say a time period, and then we gotta fact check them because they're often wrong.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not so sure that he's right about this one. But it's probably fine. Everything's probably fine. Don't worry about it.
We got some accuracy because we know that in England they had dragonflies and in America they had butterflies.
That's true.
That's true. All of the great myths from England are about slaying dragons, and everything in America involves butter.
With butter.
Yeah.
This is wow. We are an insightful bunch.
Oh gosh, is Russell T. Davies calling us fat for being Americans? Is that what he's doing in this episode?
What's fun about this having to, be reinserted into the proper timeline is this is the closest we can feel to actual time travel, where it's like, oh god, the timeline is actively changing right now, and we're aware of it.
Yeah. That's true. So, as a time travel consultant, how do you feel about that, Dan? About people being aware that the timeline is changing.
I mean, technically you wouldn't be, because if you make any change to the past, it would have to have happened the first time or else it didn't happen. So technically, whenever you change anything in the past, you're going to a previous point in time in a different timeline where that did in fact happen the first time.
Mm.
And just all the listeners just immediately zoned out. It's like I'm on a first date right now.
So this is something. So I'm wearing my DeLorean shirt because I do want to talk about timelines, and I'm going to digress a little bit and talk about the Back to the Future film trilogy. Which
I've seen
How
those.
dare you go on a tangent? We tend to be a very focused podcast.
You're
I know
right.
I always strive to make sure that we are always on track and we're just talking about the material.
Yeah. Yeah, Back to the Future, for those who aren't familiar, is the trilogy that takes place in an Old West town. And
It's based on a ride, right? It's based on a ride.
Oh, yeah, it's based on a ride.
The earliest part is there's a T-Rex on the ride, and that's where the Stitches in Time Back to the Future begins.
Yeah, and because there are dinosaurs in this clip of Space Babies, I feel like it's relevant. So, no, but so we see in Back to the Future Part 1, which I don't know why they called it that, because it's like Star Wars. They started it with Part 3 and then went 1 and then 2. I don't know. But Part 1, Marty McFly is talking about, if I don't get my parents back together, then this photo of my siblings and me from the future, like they're starting to fade out. And after a lot of thinking about Back to the Future that I've done, because I'm the Stitches and I'm the Matrix archivist, I kind of have to. I can't turn my brain off. I always figured that the amount of his siblings that was present in that photo was reflective of the probability of his parents getting together versus not getting together.
That makes more sense than people are like, oh, is his brother walking around without a head? No, it's a countdown clock, not a literal representation.
Exactly. So that's my headcanon for Back to the Future. And yeah, because the thing about this clip of Space Babies is that Ruby is not aware of the lizard Ruby isn't aware of the timeline change. And then it's like sort of unclear if she is aware of it afterwards. But like, obviously the Doctor is aware of it, but he's Time Lord and he sees through time and stuff. So,
Yeah.
Well, I think going back to your Back to the Future analogy, it fits where it's like physically she has changed but doesn't remember, but the Doctor acts quick enough that before anyone fades out of existence, the picture is now complete again.
Yeah, because the butterfly wasn't like totally dead. It was just like, if things continue on this course, then it will change the course of human evolution or whatever. And
the Doctor kissed it and made it all better.
Yeah, the difference is that instead of whenever the lizard Ruby thinks about her parents, Jingle Bell Rock plays very ominously.
And it begins to hail.
Yeah.
And especially related to the previous episode, as we all established, fuck dragonflies. Nobody likes dragonflies. But butterflies are like the most important thing. This series it's only sometimes that they care about changing the future. We had that previous episode with the museum. So if it's a museum or if you ever come across a butterfly, you have to be worried about changing the future.
There are solid, ironclad rules about time travel that you must only ever change when relevant to the plot.
Exactly. The Doctor's trying to save himself and his companions in the museum episode. So, like, that makes sense because it's selfish, which is a very Hartnell thing. And then, like, in this episode, it's about the 15th Doctor saving Ruby Sunday from never having existed and instead being
Rubathon Blue of the 57th Hemisphere Hatchling.
Rubathon Blue of the 57th Hemisphere Hatchling. This is obviously.
Yeah,
which I committed to memory and definitely didn't have to write down.
We're like, what's the main difference if we crush this butterfly and everything changes? Ruby is just really mean now.
That's the worst part, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not that she's a lizard creature. It's that she's...
It's like, if you called me a liar, I will have to kill you.
Becca, I think because we do get this bit of alternate timeline here, you need to develop almost like a Snapchat kind of filter that you can go to the beginning of Stitches in Time and apply this filter to everyone and anyone and have the butterfly universe Stitches in Time that only exists up until this point, till the Doctor fixes it.
Right.
But that way you get the theatrical cut and the director's cut.
Exactly. And the whole edit is otherwise identical, except that I cut out the part where Shooty saves the butterfly.
Dan, you might know this. When does Ashton Kutcher become relevant to this
Never.
episode?
Oh, sorry.
I mean, correct.
I've never actually seen the Butterfly Effect movie. I know, bad time travel consultant.
I have only ever seen it on FX, used to play it all the time. So I've never seen it the whole way through, but I've seen the majority of it 1,000 times. I have no idea how it begins. I have no idea how it ends.
Okay, can I say something about the Butterfly Effect? Because I saw it in theaters, and then I watched it again on DVD like a couple years ago.
Do we have to explain what DVDs are to our younger listeners?
Probably. DVDs are these physical discs that people used to have instead of implanting MP4s directly into your brain. Now,
hey kids, you would yeet a disc into a thing.
I'm pretty sure the fact that I know what yeet means that nobody uses it anymore. Okay, so the movie, for our listeners who haven't seen The Butterfly Effect, well, Mandy, do you want to Mandy explain the amount of The Butterfly Effect that you've seen?
Okay. Ashton Kutcher had a shitty childhood, and I guess as part of that shitty childhood, at one point they stick a firework into a mailbox and like kill a woman. I don't even know entirely what happened to the woman because something happened with her, but it's a bad time. And then they grow up and everyone's life sucks. And then I think he finds a book. He finds the death note, but it's the time travel death note, not the regular death note. And he's like, "Oh, I'm reading it, but what if it were different?" Makes his childhood different. Like, what if we didn't put a firework in that lady's mailbox? And then everyone has a better life, except, oh no, some people have worse lives. And then he tries to change it again. I think at one point he gets the firework and he gets everything blown up. And then he's like, the girl he has a crush on, like, things just keep happening. And he's like, oh, I can fix it. And then he just makes it worse over and over again. And I feel like one of the times it was mostly fine, but like the girl didn't like him anymore. So he was like, I can't have that.
It's the premise of one of my favorite Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes. It's Homer with a toaster.
Yeah, so first of all, it's an insanely dark movie to put Ashton Kutcher in, and like he's not terrible in it, but I just feel like from a marketing perspective, you want literally anyone else in that role just to be like, this is not a comedy. This is a really dark fucking movie.
It's very much, you can see it as him trying to, like, I want to get serious roles now, so I have to do a very deep movie, but then it just seems more comically, everything bad that could possibly happen has to happen to you. It's very Number 23.
Yeah, my favorite
remember that Jim Carrey movie.
My favorite instance of the sitcom actor trying to be more serious, toughen up, was Matt LeBlanc in Lost in Space. Like, it's just, okay, first of all, I love that movie. I for what it is, I love that movie. But my favorite piece of trivia about that movie is that it is the movie that dethroned Titanic from the #1 spot after its record-breaking number of weeks at the top of the charts.
That's actually incredible. I did not know that. Oh my god. All right. So here's the thing about The Butterfly Effect. It's in this really dark movie. The way it ends, I'm going to spoil the whole movie. Or I should say, the way it ended when I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, because it has like a different ending as well.
Which I didn't know until I was watching the DVD and saw the much, much, much darker ending. So, the end of the movie, he like comes to the conclusion basically that everything he's changed has been in service of like trying to end up with the girl that he has a crush on. And he realizes that's never going to happen. So the end of the movie, he goes back to like being like a 8-year-old or whatever at some birthday party when they first meet. and he's just like, I hate you, I never want to talk to you again, thus changing, like, okay, they don't become like friends, they aren't like whatever. And he's like, okay, I have to, like, this is heartbreaking, but it's like what I have to do in order to like make the world better and make everyone else's lives better. And then it ends on this like kind of sweet moment, like years later in like New York City, and they're both like walking all on the sidewalk, and they like sort of glance at each other as if they like kind of recognize one another, but then they just like keep walking or whatever. I was like, okay, that's like kind of a cute moment, whatever. The original ending for this movie, which auto-played on the DVD that I watched, he goes back into himself as a fetus and strangles himself to death with the umbilical cord.
It's a little extreme for him. It's like, I can never be with this girl. It was actually better if she never met me, so I'm just not going to be alive. I will abort myself. I will yeetus this fetus.
Yeah, so that movie's insane, and I can't believe that they made any ending like that. Like, that's just, it's so wild to me that
And it really
exists.
I have heard of that as the ending. It's one of those things like, oh, this had an even wilder ending originally. It was too much, and so when it went to theaters, it had to have this softer ending. They had to cushion it, and it was like, no, that actually sounded fine. That first one, maybe the test audiences are right sometimes.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say they made a good call by changing the ending on that one. Oh my god.
Oh, can you imagine being like, I almost said the Muppeteer, but like the puppeteer of the person or the CG artist who has to be like, okay, so this is your assignment.
Yeah,
Oh,
just
it is? Wow, this Look Who's Talking movie, the new one, is taking a weird turn.
So
you're telling me this is an Ashton Kutcher movie right now?
Oh, it's gonna be hilarious.
So at what point, I guess like Big Finish will write the bit where Rubicon Motherlode Lizard 7
100% accurate.
strangles
notes,
herself on her own egg. She crushes her own egg.
Yeah. That's the darkest timeline. Or maybe Lizard Ashton Kutcher comes back and squashes her egg. Just to really drive it home. See, now I want to know, like, in this alternate Lizard timeline, I just want to know, like, what the rest of that, well, how does the church on Ruby Road, like, fit into that timeline? Like, is it just like a lizard woman leaving
Exactly the same, except they're just playing Jingle Bell Rock.
Yeah, maybe it's the egg clutch on Ruby Road, or
it's a
the really warm
maybe.
rock outside.
Oh, you can't imply it's she's a lizard, so it's a synagogue now. We just went down a dark road.
No, I'm just trying to think about different things that can happen in timelines. I didn't mean it, audience. I'm so sorry.
I mean, if we're lucky, the lizard verse has no religion.
That's the dream, right? That's the ideal situation. But then, where would Ruby's mom leave her? Fire station, probably. Was that a thing? Was that ever really a thing? That, like, people would leave babies at fire stations?
Yeah, they like there's a whole setup of places do it where they make basically like a box that you can put a baby in, and they have rules about it of like you won't get in trouble if you leave a baby in this box. Leave your baby in this box, which is, in theory, it's good. In practice, it is often done by a lot of legislators of like, oh, we're going to take away any sort of funding for abortion, but we'll make this box for you to put your baby in.
Maybe we're in the darkest timeline.
We are.
Maybe this is what this is.
We 1,000%, and we don't even look half as cool as Rubicon or
Rubicon Motherlode 7. That's what I've decided her name is.
I just realized this is a lot like what happens in the Super Nintendo game Chrono Trigger when you mess with the past, and everyone becomes lizard people in the present.
Wait, is that a real thing that happens in that game?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. I've never played
Yeah.
Chrono Trigger.
It is one of my absolute all-time favorite video games. It's a JRPG with time travel, and it is... I've played it a million times. You would love it. Actually, no, you would hate it because you don't play in chronological order. You start in the year 1000, and then you go back to 600. Yeah, so no, okay, maybe... Can't recommend for Becca. For everyone else, glowing recommendation.
Something that I've been wondering about this, because the butterfly that implies like, oh, we have lizard people, and I know that tends to come from the idea of like, well, originally dinosaurs were the main life, and then they got killed off. So this implies like, oh, the butterfly did that. The butterfly made the asteroid come.
Well, so I also wonder that about when, because we saw that clip of City of Death where Tom Baker goes to the primordial goop and just like scoops a bunch out of it and then like throws some of it back and like wipes the rest on his scarf. I'm just like, my guy, what's going on? Although he probably had the butterfly compensation switch.
Yeah, that's
flipped
true.
on in that
Yeah.
one. So yeah.
And that's also like, Shooty is such a great doctor, and part of it is that little bit of he starts off as they are exiting.
What if I change history by stepping on a butterfly or something?
Well, that's not gonna happen, is it?
Why are you concerned about butterflies? Don't mess with butterflies. What are you worried about? And then he was like, hey, the whole time you had a butterfly button. The whole time. So like you're mocking her when you know that it's important that we have a butterfly button and you forgot to do it. She was accurate in her concerns about it. Way to be the first Doctor.
Yelling at a woman because she doesn't understand what all the TARDIS controls do. She doesn't understand how buttons work.
Completely forgot the butterfly compensation switch.
You see, Ruby, it's a spring inside, and the spring wasn't connecting properly.
Oh, can we talk about this for another 3 minutes straight, please, Doctor? Just so I really understand what's going on.
This episode has to be educational. We put this as educational programming. Here's how springs work. How long do we think the Doctor is able to post-regeneration breathe on stuff to make it better? And why don't they use that more? Like, why don't they spend their first, like, week in a hospital just breathing on people?
Because it might alter the timeline, Mandy. Some of those people might grow up to be Hitler, too. You never know.
Sorry, I'm just trying to think of a subtitle for Hitler 2, like Judgment Day or something.
Adolf Hitler and the Chamber of Secrets.
If someone had their way.
Yeah, right? Jesus Christ. 2 Adolf, 2 Hitler.
Dan, as our time travel consultant and also apparently our bug consultant, which bugs do and do not affect the timeline?
The scarab from Aladdin, and that's it.
Does or doesn't?
It doesn't. All bugs are, yeah. All other bugs, we have to protect. They did a lot of harm in The Lion King. It's all Disney references right now, apparently. But yeah, every time Timon and Pumbaa,
Slimy yet satisfying.
yeah, the timeline is just shattering into pieces every time they want a snack. It is just absolute anarchy.
Well,
it's like the
it's
theory...
actually in The Lion King. It's absolute monarchy, but whatever.
It's like that theory that all the Pixar movies take place in like one dystopian timeline. It's that every time they're eating a bug, it is creating that dystopian timeline.
This does bring something up. This is our first Disney bit. So
True.
How long before this episode is taken down due to copyright?
There's not much music under it, so I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, it depends on how much of the how much audio I end up splicing into this podcast episode. at the end of the podcast, I'm just going to play the audio from the entire episode just to really, really.
Starting
fuck us
with the
over.
Disney Plus click, so you really know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
We'll also be sharing login and passwords if anyone wants to use our account.
Here's my street address. Here's my social security number. Here are all my credit cards. Our fans wouldn't do anything nefarious with that, would they?
No, they're cool.
They're cool. Dan knows from the meetings.
I'll find that mole. I don't care what it takes. I'll find them.
Oh, that's why you have so many mirrors. You're just looking for a mole. I'm so sorry.
Is that the first dermatology joke of the series?
I think it might be, yeah.
Yeah!
We did it!
Yay! Finally.
The true mark of any podcast. Dermatological jokes.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think that'll wrap it up for us for Space Babies. Thanks for listening, everyone, and join us next week when we're going to talk about The Hand of Fear. Ooh. You can check out Dan Peck at Dune Pook. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. DOONPOOK.
That's a term called ooglification. I don't know if you have heard that.
I thought it was just something called theater kids being bored.
That's true. Well, there's a word ooglification, and to ooglify something is to replace all the vowel sounds with the vowel sound oo. And the reason I know about that is because I played Vice Principal Panch in Spelling Bee, and I decided to look up all my own words, and that was one of the words I used, and I was like, I can't believe there's a word for this. But there is. Education.
I was really expecting you to say, the reason I know this is because I was bullied as a kid.
That is also true, which is why I did theater instead of having a soul. Who am I? All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Having a breakdown here. Bye. Thanks for listening to Stitches in Time. Music by Becca the Matrix Archivist. Art by Mandy Ukendo. Logo by Ben Padden. Email us at matrixarchivist@gmail.com.
So the park where I've been walking Leia every day. Some days there is outdoor yoga, and if I time it just right, I walk past them when they're all doing the downward dog, and it looks like everyone's bowing towards me. And like, I get it. I get the appeal of that.
Yeah.
Doctor,
But
if you have made an incorrect accusation, I will have to kill you.
no.
Oh no.
I'm dead now.
Like, you can't die. I can't do this on my own.
Don't you give us the butterfly effect ending. Don't you do
no.
it.
If you do this, it's becoming a Coyote Ugly podcast. Every week we watch Coyote Ugly.
In the proper order, though, right?
Yeah.
Which is just watching the movie straight from beginning to end. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all right. As long as it's in the proper order. I don't care what this podcast is.
Stitches in Time, the podcast where Mandy shows people Coyote Ugly. In the proper order.
One clip at a time.
I have to insist that the title of this podcast remains Stitches in Time, a Doctor Who podcast, but you can talk about whatever you want.
We'll also sometimes watch Batman Beyond.
That sounds great. You have to watch Batman Beyond after Coyote Ugly because it takes place in the future. So.
Oh, very true.
Yeah. See? This is... Okay, you're right. I can't die. I have to be the person who enforces the law out here.